Well, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says there will be more Ukrainian flags in the Donbas region in the coming week after his troops took control of the strategically important town of Lyman. Russia's defence ministry confirmed the pullout of its forces. Lyman is in the Donetsk region, one of 4 regions that Russian President Vladimir Putin proclaimed to be part of Russia on Friday. The recapture of Lyman by Ukrainian troops is part of a wider counteroffensive that has seen Ukraine retake significant amounts of territory in the east.
Raising their flag once again. These images purportedly show Ukrainian troops taking back control of Lyman after the Russian Defence Ministry confirmed its troops' withdrawal from the town.
Despite our significant superiority in forces and means, the enemy brought in reserves and continued the offensive. Due to the threat of encirclement, the Allied troops were withdrawn from the settlement of Lyman to more advantageous lines.
The recapture of the town in Donetsk comes just 24 hours after Moscow formalised its illegal annexation of the region, after what Kyiv and the West branded a sham referendum. Meanwhile, close to Lyman, a local official said dozens were killed by Russian shelling as they tried to flee. He branded it a cruel act that can't be justified. One survivor spoke of her experience.
As we were going along, the shooting started abruptly from our left. The driver told me to get out of the car fast. We got out. We lay on the ground. The shelling continued. We crawled along some rail tracks. We were shot at. We couldn't even raise our heads. Even though I wanted to look at my dad, I saw my dad get shot. He was shot in the head. I saw it with my own eyes.
13 children and a pregnant woman are understood to be among the dead. These images are a reminder that despite territorial victories, the human cost of the war continues to rise.
Well, meanwhile, U.S. Defense Minister Lloyd Austin said that Ukraine's victory in Lyman would be a strategic headache for Russia as it seeks to hold off the counteroffensive elsewhere.
We're very encouraged by what we're seeing right now. Lyman sits astride the supply lines of the Russians, and they've used those routes to push men and material down to the south and to the west. And without those routes, it'll be more difficult. So this presents sort of a dilemma for the Russians going forward.
Well, DW correspondent Matthias Bullinger is in the capital, Kyiv. Matthias, a Ukrainian flag was raised on the outskirts of Lyman on Saturday. Do we know if Ukraine has now retaken the entire town?
Yeah, what we've been hearing from the Russian Ministry of Defense is that they have withdrawn from the town. So, yes, Lyman is now under Ukrainian control.
Matthias, this is being sold as an important strategic victory for Ukraine. Is that the case?
Yeah, Lyman is the first major settlement that Ukraine has been able to take back in the Donbas. Now, if we look back at March this year, end of March, beginning of April, when the Russian forces withdrew from the Kiev region and the other regions in the north, Chernihiv and Sumy, they were concentrating all their efforts on the Donbas at the time, and they were bringing all their firepower and all their manpower into the Donbas, and they were advancing slowly and there, but they claimed that recapturing the whole of Donbas was their target, their main objective of that phase of the war. They haven't been able to take the whole of the Donbas, but they were able to advance, and now this is the first time that things are reversed, that Ukraine has been taking back territory in these areas that are the core also of what Russia has illegally annexed last Friday. So This is a major victory symbolically because it is the first town of the Donbas, but it's also strategically important because it opens a new way for Ukraine further into the territories of the Donbas, of the Luhansk region notably, with possibly Severodonetsk and Lysychansk being the next big targets, the two major cities that Russia captured in May. And we, of course, don't know how easy it will be, but it is for them. The Russians are regrouping now, whether they will be able to form a new line of defense. At the moment, things look pretty chaotic, but that's probably something to be expected at this stage. We will see that later, but it's definitely adding momentum to the Ukrainian advance after they have been able to take back almost all of the Kharkiv region.
Yeah, this latest victory seems to confirm that idea of Ukrainian momentum, but how high a price is Ukraine paying for these victories in terms of casualties?
Well, Ukraine is not disclosing the number of casualties. We have been hearing that the casualties were pretty high. They are always higher in offensive operations than in defensive operations. We have only estimates, but during the maybe hottest phase of the war in the Donbas, when Russia was really using all of its firepower, Zelenskyy once talked about 100 or 200 soldiers being killed a day. Now you can do the math, even if it's become less after that. After June, it shifted a little bit. Things shifted a little bit, and Russia didn't use the same amount of firepower. But you can several dozens a day, several maybe into the hundreds a day, and 7 months. You can do the math. We must expect Ukraine to have lost several tens of thousands of soldiers. We have the Russians who are saying that Ukraine has lost 50,000 soldiers. Now, these figures are, of course, something to be treated with caution, because the numbers that one gives about their enemies' losses tend to be higher. But this war, of course, comes at a great cost to Ukraine.
DW correspondent Matthias Billinger in Kyiv, thanks so much.